Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at a video showcasing the brand new items coming for patch 2.4 in Wild Rift. Very exciting stuff. Obviously Riot's been teasing a lot more items coming, and they've actually been data mined from the Chinese beta, I think coming out next month. Either way, you know, they've been found, and the descriptions and stuff have already been leaked. Big shout out to another YouTuber, ChowZ _channel. They do a lot of this stuff, a lot of this data mining and finding skins and modeling them in game ahead of time. I've used them as a resource in the past when it comes to like hero guides and stuff, making sure that I have the correct ability descriptions. They find all this stuff ahead of time. They're a really great channel, really great resource, and they put out this video with all the new item descriptions we'll be using today. Big shout out to them for finding all this stuff and getting it early. It's very helpful for us content creators. I'm sure you'll see other YouTubers also doing a similar thing with some of their videos. So big shout out to them. Lots of praise for the work that they do. But let's get straight into looking at these new items and reviewing how they might work in Wild Rift. Okay, here we go. So new items. First of all, we have Wit's End. Now, Wit's End on PC, a little bit different than this item. This is different stat line. It's 45% attack speed, 50% or 50 magic resistance, and it has the Fray passive. Basic attack deal 15 to 80 bonus magic damage on hit. Attacking enemy will heal the amount of on-hit damage dealt by Wit's End. 100% for melee, a third for ranged when the item holder is below 50% HP. Now the big difference between this item and the version on PC is it has no attack damage on it. The PC version of Wit's End has attack damage. Traditionally makes it a good choice for, you know, Irelia, Yasuo, and Master Yi, I think, are basically the big three users. I think in Wild Rift, Irelia would not be a great user of this item. She really wants attack damage, she really wants like mixed stats, and just getting attack speed isn't really a great choice for her. On the other hand, Yasuo still gets a bunch of value out of attack speed, obviously lowers his cooldowns, is really effective for his kit. He loves getting attack speed. So another option that gives him even more of it is great. And it's also like a defensive choice. The on-hit damage, very effective for Yasuo. He does a lot of on-hits. It fits his kit great. I think this item's really good. Anytime you're against an AP mid laner or, you know, AP mid jungle, AP Baron laner, this would be a great item to pick up on Yasuo. Lots of stats that he wants. Master Yi as well. Probably can get used out of this. Traditionally, very attack speed heavy champion. Builds a lot of on-hit items. This is just another one for him to grab. But yeah, I see Yasuo as the main user of this. I don't think he'll be that good on Irelia. You know, sadly, she does want those mixed stats. She's not really just an attack speed carry. You know, she does get value, obviously, from her passive, but, you know, she builds things like the Trinity, the Blade of the Ruined King. These things all have mixed stats, and yeah, on PC, this item has attack damage, which makes it a lot more preferable for Irelia. I think with this stat line, it's just not going to be as great an item for her, and it'll probably be more of a Yasuo choice. Essence Reaver. Oh baby, this one's exciting. A little bit unsure about this translation. Either way, its item is 40, 80, 25% crit, 25 ability haste, tons of ability haste. Same as Trinity Force, I believe, is the only other item that has 25. Black Cleaver might as well now, actually, but ton of ability haste. It has an effect after dealing ability damage. It will do 10 extra damage plus 70% crit. Each ability can trigger the effect once for each target. Now, this translation is really weird. I really want to wait to see the English version of this item, because I'm not sure if this is Spellblade. Spellblade is the Sheen passive, if you're familiar with it. Sheen is the only source of this passive, and it's on every item that Sheen builds into. It doesn't appear on any other items. This item doesn't have a Sheen in it. You know, it doesn't sound like a Spellblade effect to me, and the way they described it in the dev diary, it sounded like it was an effect that was triggering on abilities. Now, it might just be a Sheen that scales with crit. I think it would be cooler if it's a on-hit effect on abilities that scales with crit. I think that would fit the item a lot better. Great item for champions like Lucian, Corki, Xayah. Anything ability heavy, loves getting haste, wants to crit, this item is perfect, you know. So those three champs I think are the big main go-tos for this one. It also has another passive that is translated, which is whenever you crit, you restore 2% of your mana. So super effective for mana carries. This means you could probably drop Mana Mune / Mirror Mana on Corki and go Essence Reaver instead. It'd probably be a lot more effective. Just has a lot more stats that he prefers. The only reason you're really going Mirror Mana right now is because you need the mana, not necessarily because you really want the item. And I think this will probably be a preferential choice. I think for like Lucian and Corki, you can definitely see builds now where it's like Essence into IE into Serylda's Grudge maybe, which is an item that's coming later for Lucian, or maybe like attack speed items for Corki. Both of these champions scale really well with AD, and they're not super attack speed reliant. Corki gets a bit more usage than Lucian does, but Lucian doesn't need to build attack speed really to get value out of his kit. So I could definitely see him just going like an Essence IE Serylda's build. We'll get onto Serylda's in a bit. But yeah, great item, great opening item for any of these ability focused ADCs. For Xayah, it's just a great item. You know, you got Essence, Zeal item, Infinity Edge. Maybe a similar build on Corki, honestly, if I think about it. But yeah, it's just an easy build path. Super effective, solves some mana issues, gives her more ability haste, which she loves. Great. I really want to see the translated version of this effect. I think it sounds really interesting. Not sure if it's just a Sheen effect, mainly because there's no Sheen in the item, which makes me think like maybe it's not a Sheen item and it's just a mistranslation, because calling it Spellblade sounds weird as well. But I guess we'll see when the English version is released. Stormrazor. Stormrazor, pretty interesting item. It gives you 25 attack damage, 25% crit, 20% attack speed, and it gives you an energized effect that gives an on-hit proc on your target that you hit. And it also makes all your energized effects apply a 75% slow. So this is kind of like an interesting item. I don't think they've added the element it has for PC where it upgrades all of your other energized items, but either way, it's traditionally a very solid opening item for AD carries in general. I think it kind of depends. You have to test to see if it's actually good, especially because the build path doesn't have any AD. I think it's a little bit more awkward because you won't be building any AD in the lane phase, but when you complete it, it's a pretty solid early item because it gives you kind of a mix of every stat that's effective. Traditionally, when it comes to like stats for AD carries, if you have the option of like 50 AD or like 50% attack speed, you'll generally want an item that gives you 25 AD, 25% attack speed instead. It just is a better mix of stats and it's generally better for like the way the DPS works. Most champions will prefer the mix when it comes to kind of these kind of items. So that's what Stormrazor provides, where it's like a mix of a lot of early stats that are very valuable. It also has crit on it. It's basically like a solid early item. Like you build this item and it will give you solid stats all around, as well as a pretty powerful effect. And it also, while it doesn't specifically buff your energized effects that you build in the future, it doesn't give a 75% proc to your energized. So if you're going to build something like RFC, you'll end up with these really long range attacks that apply a pretty significant slow to the first target you hit. This can be really useful for doing stuff like kiting and, you know, getting an early hit and then carrying on to trade with somebody. I think this item is kind of like one of those items where it's either good and everybody wants to build it first all the time, or it's just kind of mediocre and it doesn't get built very often at all, except occasionally later. Traditionally also a pretty good Jhin item. Jhin gets a lot of value of this combined with RFC. Synergizes well with this root. Yeah, I mean, the video list is good for Graves. It might be good for Graves. I mean, again, yeah, I think Stormrazor is just one of those items that you kind of have to test and just see if it feels better than other choices, because it might just be like the go-to first item for carries like Jinx or Tristana, or, you know, champions like this that kind of need like a solid initial item to get them through like an early game. This is normally a pretty good choice. Serylda's Grudge. Oh baby, am I hyped for this one. So this item gives you 40 attack damage, 15 ability haste, and it has the Last Whisper effect, which gives 30% armor penetration, and it also has Bitter Cold, which means dealing ability damage slows affected units by 30% for 1 second. Great item for any AD assassins. A lot of games you probably don't need Mortal Reminder, you just build it because it's the only option. Now you have another one. This item is great for Zed, great for Lucian. It has ability haste on it as well, which makes it feel even better. Zed, for example, obviously scales insanely well with cooldown reduction. He loves building as much CDR as he can. This is just like, hey, you know you're building Mortal Reminder? What if you built the same thing, but it gave you ability haste, and it made all your abilities slow, so you can hit shurikens even easier? Like, it's such a cracked item for champions like Zed. Like I mentioned, it also fits into that solid Lucian build, where you go like Essence Reaver, i.e. Serylda's Grudge is very AD heavy, but Lucian doesn't traditionally need attack speed because of the way his kit works. A lot of auto resets with his Relentless Pursuit, and this build will have a lot of ability haste in it, especially combined with CDR boots as well. You'll be getting way more dashes and not having to rely on attack speed at all, and just having loads of upfront damage. Also super great for Lucian because it makes his culling slow, which is actually really annoying to play against. Like, I'm sure you can imagine how frustrating that sounds. Another also great item for Ezreal, mentioned down below. Obviously Ezreal throws loads of spells. Having his Mystic Shot slow, even with a Trinity Force build, is super annoying. Very frustrating to play against as well. Generally just a super solid option for any champions. Make a lot of, you know, any AD champions that use their spells a lot, and in a game where you don't need Mortal, you have another choice now that gives you more ability haste and just gives you a lot of extra utility. Super solid item. Glad to see it added for those sort of champions. Navori Quickblades. This one is really interesting. 45 AD, 25% crit, 15 ability haste, and it's got Death Strikes, which is critical strikes reduce your basic abilities cooldowns for 15% of their remaining cooldown. This item is really interesting, but it's never been in a great place. It has existed in PC for a long time, but it's never really been a staple of any real build. It's kind of weird. It's a really weird item. It does have haste on it, which means that it's already kind of an effective choice. Again, for champions like Lucian, I think after those first 3 items, going this item is a solid 4th, just because it gives you even more, you know, it finishes off your crit, it gives you a crit, it gives you a more ability haste, it gives you stats that Lucian gets value of. But kind of the issue with this item is the way that it functions is it lowers a percentage of your remaining cooldown, right? Which is generally more effective if your cooldowns are higher, right? Because then you're lowering more of the cooldown on each crit. It's more useful on champions that have longer cooldowns, but then it's like, if I'm playing a champion with long cooldowns, why would I build this item and not just build different items that give you you more effective stats to lower those cooldowns, you know? I think that's kind of the issue with Quickblades, is it has a really weird identity where, yeah, it lowers cooldowns, but it's more effective the higher the cooldowns are, but it's also giving you ability haste. It's just this really weird, you know, in the middle of these two kind of playstyles. Overall, yeah, I think it's a good item on Lucian, and maybe champions like Xayah, maybe like Tristana, these champions that do have like kind of these long cooldowns that are a little bit ability focused. Overall, it's a bit of a weird item, and a lot of the time it's more, you know, likely that you'll just build another item that just gives you better stats for like the playstyle of your champion in the moment, right? Building this item is just a bit strange. It kind of feels in the middle. Do think it's a solid 4th item for that Lucian mid build. As mainly of a Lucian mid build, by the way, that Lucian build, but do think it's a solid 4th item for that build. Maybe Xayah, maybe Tristana, but outside of that, it's kind of a weird item. Staff of Flowing Water. So this one is remixed from PC. The PC version gives you like shielding and healing power. It's very dedicated support, but that stat doesn't exist in Wild Rift, so they haven't put it on here. Instead, it gives you 65 ability power, 350 mana, 20 ability haste, and it has an effect called Rapids, which is healing or shielding allied champions, grants you and them 20 ability haste and 20 to 40 ability power for 4 seconds. Now, you might think this is a great support item. My first take on this is, honestly, it's an Orianna item. It has like a bunch of stats that Orianna really likes, and, you know, mana's great, ability power is great, haste is great, and the effect is actually quite, you know, solid for Orianna, because she's shooting quite actively, and then you're always giving yourself another ability haste and more ability power. Definitely could have an interesting application in that regard, but you'd probably need another teammate that could get advantage out of it. Outside of Orianna, as like kind of a weird niche item, obviously it's great on all these champions that provide healing and shielding in any scenario where you don't want Ardent Sensor generally. It's generally like, you know, the option instead of Ardent Sensor, if you don't have a solid Ardent Sensor user on your team, you'll build Staff of Flowing Water instead and just give your allies ability haste and ability power if relevant, but mostly it's about the haste. But yeah, I do think it's an interesting niche item for Orianna. Could see it popping up in her builds, and she might be in the meta a bit more often because of other items being added. Other items being added, maybe Seeker's Armguard is one of those items that could be making the difference. So this is a item that's building into the new Crystalline Reflector, which we'll get into a little bit. This item just gives you 30 armor, 25 ability power, builds out of cloth armor. I think it was 1k. I think he showed the prices somewhere else, and I think I saw that it was 1k total. Either way, great item for mages, champions like Orianna, champions like, you know, there's other mages that we've got, Ziggs. I was just thinking, like, do we even have any other mages? Obviously, it's a great option into these, like, Zeds, into these Lucians, these early game dominant AD champions, or even AD heavy comps. This is a great item to allow you to counter build, especially when you're ahead. You normally want to build items that give you defensive stats, and this item didn't exist because they didn't add Zondas in this game, right? They made it an enchant instead. So this item didn't exist to give you the option to build defensively, but now you have a great armor AP option. It upgrades into an awesome item as well that we'll get into. A solid early item. This item's really good to build in lane phase. You don't need to finish the full item straight away, but you can build this while building your initial item like a Ludens or a or you know, you can go like tier into Seeker's Armguard and just have like a solid option. It can also let you start with a cloth armor, which is an interesting thought, because you can kind of just go cloth into Seekers. You don't have to build like potions or anything in the PC, and there's no starting items, so like, you know, you'll just be dropping like 20 AP for like a much safer lane phase, and then an early rush into a Seeker's Armguard, which gives you a lot of AP anyway, and then you can build like a tier, or on Ziggs you can go into a Lost Chapter. So cloth armor start could be a solid option for mages if they do want to counter build like these Zeds or these Lucians early in the game. Solari Chargeblade. Man, this item is really interesting. This is a unique item to Wild Rift. It gives 25% crit, 30% attack speed, 25 ability haste, and it has a unique effect called Sun Impact, which is using ability grants a stack of radiance, which goes up to 3 stacks. And if you're energized, your next ability hit will have, when you attack. So I don't know if energized means actually. Maybe it means when you have 3 stacks. I'm not sure if it means you have 1 stack or 3 stacks, but either way, while you have the stacks, you gain additional crit chance. I think it's just 1 stack, but I think it stacks up to 3. When you deal a critical strike, you consume a stack and you deal extra true damage on your hit, and the damage is increased on low health targets. This item seems crazy. It's basically giving you 50% crit every time you use an ability. The problem with it, I think, is it has a bit of a weird spread of stats. But again, I do think it's a really solid item for any champions that do make use of attack speed, do want crit, and have ability haste. Things like Xayah, things like Graves, maybe Tristana again. These kind of champions can get a lot of value out of this item, and it's really interesting because it just gives you really high crit chance. You only need 3 crit items, and then when you're using abilities, and you can stack it up to 3 times, so you don't have to be like patient with your ability usage or anything. You have 100% crit for the next 3 hits. They're doing bonus true damage, and they're executing if they're low. Like, this item just seems like it's so overloaded. The other champion that can make amazing use out of this is Yasuo, maybe? The reason I say maybe is because I'm not 100% sure how the effect works, and it seems weird because you'll be overcapping on crit really fast. If it works how it sounds, you know, using your abilities will grant you a stack that gives you 50% crit on your next hit, which is 100% crit on Yasuo. So you could buy just this item, and then every time you press Q, every time you press your first ability, it's a guaranteed crit. And then every time you use your third ability, your next auto is a guaranteed crit. Yasuo, believe it or not, uses both of these abilities all the time and gets a lot of value out of crit, attack speed, and ability haste, for his ultimate and his dash cooldown. I think his dash is affected by ability haste. Wind wall as well. This item could completely break Yasuo as a first item. The other thing is, like, Yasuo applies on-hit effects super easily. And this means every time you press your first ability, you'll be 100% critting and doing 26 to 40 extra true damage, and it is increased by up to 150% if they're low HP. This item's gonna be nuts, no? I just see this item and I think this item's completely crazy on Yasuo. I don't even know if you need IE if you have this item. You could go like Solari Chargeblade into the BT, which it's received crit. We'll get into that later. And just be insanely strong on 2 items. Just some insane mega tank who's like doing crazy damage. I don't know. This item just feels like it's gonna completely break Yasuo, and I'm all for it. I play Yasuo. I'll go 10-0 or 0-10 with this item. It'll be fun. Yeah, outside of him, could be good on those ability focus ADCs. Maybe Lucian, but it's not. There are other options that give similar stats that are more AD focused, which Lucian prefers, but it could be a solid attack speed item for Lucian if you are looking for him. And again, it does proc on abilities, so it does make sense with this kit. It's just I don't think attack speed is what he normally wants to build compared to like just massing AD. So while it could be okay, I don't think it's a great choice compared to some other champions. Crystalline Reflector, here we go. 45 armor, 60 AP, 15 ability haste. Mirror Shard effect, casting ability grants a stack of Mirror Shard. Each Mirror Shard could block 10 plus 5% AP from enemy physical damage and deal 20 plus 10% of AP magic damage. So the main thing about this item, which I think is great by design-wise, is that they made it scale with AP, which means it's really strong in full AP builds and just kind of okay as like a flex item if you're just building it as a one-off on like a Malphite or a Mumu or Gragas or something like this. But on a full mage build where you're like, 4 other AP items, this is super effective, Every stack will block, let's say you get to like 700 AP, let's just say that every stack is blocking 45 physical damage and you're dealing 90 magic damage back to them. That's pretty significant numbers of just, you have 3 stacks of that. You're blocking, 130 damage, plus you have the armor. It's a super effective item. I think it's a great, obviously a great option when you're playing like Orianna, Ziggs, into like these Zeds, into these like Lucians, maybe Pantheon, or even if you just have AD assassins, Camille. I guess Camille has true damage, so not a great choice. But, if they just have a really heavy AD comp, this is just a great option. I love that items like this are getting added. I wish we'd got a magic resist kind of item as well for mids, but just having an armor item is great, and will make your building a lot more flexible. You can adapt to the game state and the enemy champions a lot more easier now. Prophet Pendant, this is just Oblivion Orb, but they've reworked Oblivion Orb into the Grievous Wounds item that it is on PC, and this is just the replacement for that, so it's the same item, it's just got a new name, a new icon. Now we're on to the adjusted items. Bloodthirster, I mentioned earlier, it now has crit on it, so it's 40 AD, 25% crit, it gives you 50% physical vamp, and it also carries on the overheal effect. This item is way more effective now for champions like Draven, champions like I said, Yasuo. Like, I could easily see a build on PC, like there's a lot of builds on Yasuo actually where you don't take Affinity Edge, and it sounds kind of bad from a damage perspective, but I could easily see a build where it's like Chargeblade, Bloodthirster, and you just have really solid sustain, really high damage, and it's just a really effective build, you're just really safe with the overheal as well. Could definitely see a build like that functioning pretty powerfully. But yeah, a solid item for a lot of ADCs, honestly, in any game where you need a little bit of extra tankiness, but you don't want to build like a tank item or a full defensive item. This gives you like that overheal shield, which lets you be, survive initial burst a little bit stronger, and you have this like solid vamp. Just a really good item in general. Generally like a 4th item, a lot of ADCs if they do want it as a choice, but it's a nice option. It is there now if you are interested in getting it, and it does have the crit, so it's not wasting a slot or anything. Thornmail. So Thornmail, they've added the effect where if you immobilize an enemy champion, your Grievous Wounds is now extended from 40% to 60%. It's a thing on PC they added where they made Grievous Wounds a little bit more flexible and gave every item that has Grievous Wounds, they lowered it from 50 to 40, and then they gave it an effect that let it go up to 60. So that's kind of what they've done with all these items. Executioner's Calling, you see now it's now 40% Grievous Wounds instead of 50, like I said. Mortal Reminder now has effect if the enemy health is lower than 50%. The Grievous Wounds effect is now increased to 60%. It starts at 40%. So basically it's just like when you get enemy champions low, they struggle to heal more. That's kind of the idea of Mortal Reminder. It's kind of like, as you get aggressive and you get them lower, they can't heal as much. Oblivion Orb has been added. Now I don't know the cost of this item. I think I didn't see it. This might be a 1k as well, but it's basically 40 ability power, which is quite a significant amount. and it has Grievous Wounds effect. This is kind of like the Executioner's Calling equivalent for AP champions. So obviously AP champions, it was quite hard to build anti-healing. You pretty much had to rely on the physical champions on your team, but now AP champions have a convenient option. This would definitely be cheap. It would be between, you know, 500 and 1500. I'm not sure on the exact number, but either way, it's, you know, it's a cheap option that lets you build anti-healing in the game very easily. You know, and for champions that have AoE effects like Orianna, Ziggs, obviously these champions apply Grievous Wounds really easily. So it's a great option for them if they do have any champions that rely on, you know, that do provide a lot of healing. So you could definitely think about this as an AP option a lot more effectively rather than having to build the entire Morellonomicon. Speaking of Morellonomicon, this is the other version. I don't think it has the effect. It is here, but it's not translated. I think it's the same thing where if they're below 50% HP, your Grievous Wounds is increased to 60% instead of 40%. It builds from Magic Pen item as well, which is actually kind of interesting because on PC, they actually changed it so Morellonomicon no longer gives you Flat Magic Pen. They kind of reworked Flat Magic Pen entirely, but on Wild Rift, you still can build it. So this is actually not a terrible option as a final item as well. It does give Flat Pen. Traditionally, I guess you'll probably build either this or maybe could build it as an Infinity Orb, but you might just build this as a last item kind of inevitably, and then you just have like 30 Flat Pen, which is really solid against squishies with an Infinity Orb, and you have a Void Stuff, which is quite a significant amount of penetration. So this is honestly, I think the ease of building Oblivion Orb will actually make Morello a lot more relevant in the meta, and a lot more mage champions will have Morello as a final item. Like, you won't upgrade this until the end, probably. It's still a very solid 6 slot item, you know? You don't feel bad about having this anymore because the build path is a lot more convenient, and you can just build the Oblivion Orb early and kind of sit on it for a while, then upgrade it to Morellonomicon later, and it doesn't feel bad at all, you know? So definitely in a much better place. Infinity Orb now builds out of the Pendant that I've already forgotten the name of. Phantom Dancer, they changed to build out of, I think this might be the first item that builds out of 3 items. I'm not sure if I'm going crazy or like if this hasn't happened yet. I feel like everything else builds out of 2, though. So I think this is the first item that builds out of 3 components. But I think it was because it built out of Zeal and Crit Cloak, and then I'm pretty sure you lost Crit. Because I think this was 30%, like this plus Crit Cloak was 30%, and then this gave you 25 or something, so they were just fixing it so the stats make more sense. Yeah, they show some of the costs here, but they don't have the components. But yeah, interesting enough, Frozen Mallet is actually removed. I think the reason for this mainly is just that the only champion that builds it really is Senna. It's not really built on anybody else, so not exactly a huge loss, but if you're a Frozen Mallet fan, I'm sorry. We can see here Wits End 2700, Serylda's 33k, Navori 31, 3k for Chargeblade, 29 for Stormrazor. Pretty cheap for Stormrazor actually, so if it is a solid item, I think it would be very, very buildable. But yeah, all the other prices are roughly the same. I think BT's a little bit cheaper as well. I think it's 3400 on live, but it's 32 on the update. So yeah, that's my look at all the new items. Hope you guys enjoyed it. You know, just going over some of the ideas, things you might want to build, you know, champions you might want to build these items on. I'm really excited for this update. I think it's really cool. Bring a lot of fresh builds and ideas to the game, let you experiment a lot with new stuff. And you know, of course, we're going to be playing it on the Origin Series Finals because halfway through, we're going to be switching to patch 2.4. So that's going to be pretty wild. But yeah, thank you guys very much for checking out this video. Hope you enjoyed me going through my, you know, my ideas and my thoughts. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like. Really helps out the channel. And yeah, if you want to see more content of this, make sure to subscribe. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Peace.